All right, good. We got that taken care of early, and I'm glad you're all joining us for today. Let's take a moment to kind of center. I'd like to do that right from the start. I feel like that would be helpful for me, and seems like it's always helpful for all of us here. Did anybody want to start with that, or I'm happy to lead that?
Yeah, please lead us.
Okay, so take a moment. Notice what part of you is connecting to your seat. This part of you that's connecting to the ground. Aware of the body. Release yourself from any judgment, any criticism. Simply acknowledge, this is my body. I'm connecting. I'm here. I'm on the earth. And may we be able to recognize that that is true. Here we are, this physical body on this earth. There's also some part of us that lengthens and lifts upwards towards the sky, towards the cosmos, towards that infinite realm above, towards the unknown. In many ways, it leads us towards mystery. In that realm, we may have a more challenging connection to what is true, but we can at least acknowledge an energy lifting upwards towards that direction. The inhale supports the body as we lift and lengthen. The exhale supports us as we center, settle, and ground. All of us, no matter where we are on this planet, as we live and breathe, we can acknowledge we are connected. May that be something we can settle into a truth. We all have an inhale and an exhale, and this connects us. Allow that truth to continue to help you to arrive in this present moment. To acknowledge the wonder and awe of our bodies meeting in this same time. Technology that makes it possible for us to find ourselves in this space together. And the sheer will to want to show up and be here together. May this help to ground us, to have that be an initial place, a foundation, from which all other creative energies, the exploration of this life can launch forward. Just as this primordial sound of Om that we'll chant in a moment is a symbol of the beginning, that first sound, that first vibration, and that everything came forth from that. May we collect our energy, have this nice foundation that creates the springboard for today's conversation. From this place, let's chant Om 3 times. Inhale. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. All right. Glad you're all here, and thank you all for making time for our Empower Hour, really hour 0.25 as I'm calling it now. And much of this is meant to be interactive, but I do want to set the tone and start off with sharing some slides that helps us kind of get into that space, as our 3 ohms, I feel like, also did. So if you're all bear with me, I'll go ahead and start this presentation. And I'll go ahead and press the share screen. Okay, here we go. And let me know if you can all see this.
Not yet. Now we can.
Okay, very good. I'm gonna hide the magic cursor. All right, so here we are, our 10th Empower Hour. Woohoo! And I'm so happy that many of you have been to every single one of these, and it's been quite a great crew that's been a part of this. So I thank you all so much. I'd like to tell you all the title: Frightened by the Truth, Soothed by the Illusions. So this is sort of in honor of Halloween and also in honor of Diwali, which is happening now. To start off with, we wish to all invoke a space that is courageous and kind, filled with the power of diversity, welcoming to everyone here and beyond, supportive to feelings and emotions, inspired to take action for good efforts, and that we have a space that's joyful and intentional. But as I said, supporting all of the emotions and the feelings, and I feel that it's important that we really make space for whatever we go through as a human being, that this is a process, especially if you think about the spectrum between light and dark. Oh my goodness, what a spectrum, right? So lots can happen in that spectrum, and we're meant to experience them all, not to just feel like we're supposed to always be in one realm. Also want to offer open eyes, open hearts, and open minds. May this gathering provide inspiration, healing, creativity, or even just a good hour 0.25 of our time together. If you need to leave early, it's the divine will, and we're happy you could be here for any time you have given. So let's take this moment to look around at our fellow participants and feel the miracle of being gathered in this space together. Thank you all. Okay, so this is our Empower Hour, October 23rd. Again, inspired by Halloween and this really cool, groovy, moving background. Thank you, canva.com. This is our community conversation based on yoga philosophy and other spiritual teachings, and inspired by Halloween and Diwali. We are recording, so that was my little reminder, but thankfully we got it. All right, so I wanted to start off, before actually we even do this, let's say hello to each other. So let me sort of stop screen sharing before we go into some of these questions. I feel like sometimes I forget to do this, and I do want to acknowledge folks that are here because of our involvement in part of the team of Mukunda Studio. So I'd love to start with actually both Anjali and Vatasha. And I'll just let you say hi one by one, but they were part of the BIPOC yoga teacher training that I co-led in 2021. And they have been a very important and integral part of these Empower Hours. They are like my go-to people as we start to talk about what's happening in the next month's Empower Hour, sort of brainstorming together, stretching out the concepts, and then really, spending some time talking about it together. And we meet every week to talk about other topics as well. So I'm very grateful that you two are here. Why don't one of you go ahead and begin and just say a little hello to our audience here. And I know they both have kids, so sometimes we'll hear their families in the background.
It's nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Ooh,
Thanks,
I can
Anjali.
see people.
Can you see? Actually, this didn't quite work. It fell off the stand, but oh well.
There you go, Amanda.
Well, I think I'm gonna have to turn it around in
And
circles.
you wanna, oh. that
Sorry,
way.
everybody in Instagram land. Whoa, you're getting dizzy. You're getting very dizzy, but you're gonna feel better soon.
Maybe you can move the phone and then do it.
Very dizzy. Very dizzy. Oh,
That's
they
funny.
made it. No, it didn't work. Oh, I know. I can turn this. Okay, it's not working.
Okay.
Here, we'll
if you
remove the
want, I
phone
can
and
try
you'll do.
it
Yeah,
as well.
Kinjal is my support team here. There we go. Okay, we'll just hold it. Thank you all. Okay, Vatasha.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a joy to be here. I enjoy opening the conversations that we have here for all sorts of opinions and views. And I think it's really good work that you've started here.
Thanks, Vatasha. And okay, awesome.
We definitely want to welcome back our constant returning member, Stevebros.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thanks to Stevebros. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, yeah, I go by the Steve Bros. That's a little inside names my brother and I have for each other. I'm the Steve Bros. He's the Mark Bros. Yeah, and it's been great coming to these. I think I've made every Empower Hour except one, and that I think that weekend I was at staying at Integral Yoga. So, but yeah, all right, great to be here. Great to see everyone. Thank you.
Thanks to Stevebros. And then we have Kinjal here.
Hi, everyone on Instagram and hi, everyone on Zoom. I have attended a few Empower Hours, trying to be more intentional of attending more frequently. And it's great to be here in person and participate. Thanks.
Thank you, Kinjal. And Kinjal is also teaching pranayama and meditation here on Mondays and Wednesdays. And we'll be teaching a 7-week series, yoga series coming up on the chakras. So Kinjal's been getting more and more involved here at the studio, which I'm very excited about. She'll also be co-teaching tonight, or it's Monday night with me for a Diwali yoga and dinner event. And speaking of Diwali, this is, yeah, we're in that period right now of celebrating that, and it is a celebration of light. And I feel like it very much aligns with this topic today, and we'll touch on some of that as we go. So good to have you all here. I'm going to come back to, oh, and also Fox is with us on Instagram Live. Hi, Fox. And I know he's in between at his acupuncture clinic, but glad that you can join us and others that are going to come in. So here we are asking ourselves this question. And it's very broad, but I wanted to start off this way intentionally. And some of you can throw in things in the chat or even come into chat live. What are some of the scary things in life? Could really think about it. Like, what are some of the scary things? Is it in our personal life, in our social life, political life, global life? What are some of the scary things? I know you all have some thoughts because we've talked about this.
I can say maybe one of the scary things in life is when you ask for contributions on a question, no one contributes.
Because everybody's afraid to contribute? Was that what's
Yeah.
happening?
Mhm.
Oh, this
This
is not
one
the
of the
shy
scary
group.
things in life.
Actually, I do say public speaking is up there with death, but all right, Anjali.
So maybe some of the scary things in life are when we think about the choices that we make versus some of the choices that maybe are made for us.
Good one. Who makes those choices for us?
Well, I mean, there are some choices that maybe we think we could make on our own, but it's based off of maybe the knowledge that we think we have, or maybe the knowledge that we need to gain some more of. But there are a lot of choices that our government makes for us that we really don't have a say in, and they're supposed to have our best interest at heart, but I guess sometimes we wonder if they really do.
Agreed. And we'll dive more into that as well. That's a good start for some of the topics today. Vatasha.
Oh, sorry, she
yeah.
had her hand on. Yep.
Yep. And then we'll get to Kinjal. Go ahead, Vatasha.
So for me, most of the fears that I have are the seen and the unseen. In the same way that I'm afraid of being seen, I'm also fearful of never being seen. And in the same way, knowing and also not knowing. I'm also fearful of the things that I do know as well as the things that I don't know. There's always two sides to every story. So you're kind of fearful to know too much and too little at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. I think that to be that humble and recognize there are things we don't know, and that can honestly be dangerous in certain situations. And so instead of trying to act like we know things, like accept, hey, sometimes I don't. Kinjal.
Yeah, I feel that not being in control can be very fearful, and the extent to which we feel like we need to be in control of every single thing all the time creates a false sense of fear. But then we start fearing everything: public speaking, getting a promotion, getting a job, and going on a date, meeting someone, and the list goes on.
Not being in control. Exactly. Yeah, I think this is something, in a way, how much does our culture try to promote that we are supposed to have everything all buttoned up and tied down and in control? And it's something, all this external pressure, rather than us learning how to really stimulate the internal confidence and grounding. All right, I'm going to go back to, I guess I'll share too about the things that I think are the scary things. I can definitely relate to that feeling of that abstract idea that somebody else has power or control that I don't have any say over, and that therefore there's a sense of domination over my rights, or a dominant behavior that doesn't consider my rights or my right to be myself and who I am on this planet. I think some of the scary things for me too is that we follow a dominant culture sometimes because we don't know how to trust anything else. And that goes for everything from, of course, politics, but also towards our diet and what we think we're supposed to be doing to stay healthy, but at what's actually going on in a lot of the farming practices that I'm not happy about. And so I guess it's just, sometimes when I really think about what's happening in those, it's scary that that is just okay, that is left to be okay. So many people just figure that's just the way it is. And that to me leads to more and more covering up of our eyes and our hearts in a way that does not seem like a good idea. That to me, it's almost like this ticking time bomb of a certain sort, where ignorance just keeps compounding. So that I'm just like, where is this going to go? Or to be able to make it possible that we might vote somebody in to be a president again, that kind of ignorance is possible. I'm like, wow, that's scary. Yeah. All right, so those are some of we were all sharing some of the scary things that we are recognizing, and it's not just Halloween stuff that we should be scared about. I think that sometimes that maybe is a fun way to acknowledge an emotion in us, but the true emotion of fear and being scared is something to talk about. There's a documentary that Anjali turned me on to called The G Word with Adam Conover. And as we were having these talks, as we were preparing for today's discussion, she said, have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? You've got to see it. This is what you're talking about today. This is the topic. And Anjali, you were so right on the money. No pun intended, third one on the list. Because what Adam Conover does is he essentially, the G word is government. And he talks about, in many ways, some of the positive ways that government has been trying to make contributions to a national economy and family, but also how it's taken such a seat of power that it's not necessarily been beneficial. And in fact, it's been damaging, in many ways, incredibly damaging. I want to offer, Amy also brought in, not growing emotionally as a person was something that was scary. So yes, thank you, Amy. That's a good one. That's a lot right there. Like, why does that happen to folks? And I think, maybe we'll touch on some of that too. So in the G word, he talks about these 6 subjects: food, weather, money, future, disease, and change. And I appreciated, just a real quick overview of it, is I appreciated that he did talk about the impulse for government to try to help in some of these areas, to try to make a better world for us. But because of our lack of belief in the system, because of the system's ineptness in a lot of areas, there's been tension, and obviously massive tension. And we've seen where there's been problems with how a country is trying to solve the food problem, how a country has, in a way, come together, and even a global world has come together because of the weather reporting. And I thought that was a really interesting topic. Obviously, how money fuels a lot of intentionality for companies when it actually should be our welfare, but instead it's money that is more important. He talked about, and then future, disease, and I liked that he talked about in the change section, it really was, okay, what can we do? And he spoke about, rather than being so frightened and overwhelmed by there's nothing we can do, the powers that be are so big, we don't seem to be able to make change. He speaks about that topic of coming back to your local government, your local community, to try to create the movement, because a lot of times we don't tend to give much of our time and energy that. We're kind of sleepy around our local politics. And he says that's where we need to recognize shifts and change can happen. So I thought of another way to talk about today, and it's so the topic, frightened by the truth, soothed by the illusions. I thought this is actually another way to define today: frightened by the light and soothed by the darkness. Frightened by the light, you would think that that wouldn't be something we would need to be frightened of, but you think about, when the sun's shining up and you're in your covers all cozy and warm, and then you have to look up, oh, it's too bright. There's actually a part of our nervous system that is wanting to stay in this cozy, warm, comfortable space. So I don't fault us sometimes for choosing that, but when we want to really wake ourselves up, and I mean that in every dimension of that phrase, it does require allowing the light in. So I wanted to share this quote that's by Marianne Williamson. Sometimes Nelson Mandela is also given credit, for this quote. Oh, wow, how did that happen? I jumped way ahead, there we go. And if somebody wants to read this from our group, anybody in Zoom or Kinjal?
I'll read it, but I think, hold on. Let me see if I can make the screen bigger. Okay. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be? Brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous. Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Thank you. Does anybody know Marianne Williamson? Anybody heard of her?
I've heard of her, but don't know much about her.
Yeah, she's actually somebody who ran for president. I don't know if any of you remember that, but she actually ran on the Democratic Party, which was quite shocking because I've known of her for a number of years. One of her main books is called A Return to Love, which I read probably 20 years ago or so. And she follows the Course of Miracles, which is an ancient text that speaks a lot about love being all there truly is and everything else is an illusion. Does anybody have any thoughts on that quote? It's a pretty famous quote of hers. Yeah.
Even before I read the quote, I was thinking about it when we were talking about lightness and darkness. In at least two of my inward journeys where I have gone deep enough, being shown the light was scary. I feel comfortable. It's kind of like we'd rather be in familiar pain than take a route to uncomfortable healing. It's almost kind of like that. And so it's familiar, we know what to expect. And I couldn't resonate more with that quote.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything that can relate? It's not our inadequacy that we most fear. It's actually the fact that we could shine. We could be amazing.
Yeah, the closer I think that I feel to God as that source of light, the more love that I think that I feel, or I could say that I feel like he's love. And so that makes me feel more confident in many ways, even sometimes when it's hard. So I really appreciate that quote.
And Vatasha?
I feel like I've heard this somewhere before. It's kind of crazy. I can't quite place it. But for me, the way that this quote resonates with me is just don't shrink yourself and be who you are fully in every step of the way. And that means for me to embrace all the dark parts of me as well as the nice parts of me. And so that's the way that the quote resonates with me.
Perfect. I appreciate you brought that up, Vatasha, that it's not just trying to be all pretty and perfect, but to be fully you, to fully be able to understand your power and your significance is that full spectrum self. And it's, not anything that I think our culture tends to promote. It tends to want us only to be this one dimension that's convenient and easy and organized for people to be able to move around. But if the more complex someone gets, I think it truly can be challenging. So sometimes I do understand and empathize with organizers of things, because it's like, my God, if you have this complex of a moving system, how do you create any kind of organizing, an organization and order? But at the same time, you have to allow for the living, breathing entities to express, their fullness. I don't know. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that one? Yeah, Nelson Mandela is often credited with that same quote, which I think historically it was Marianne Williamson, and then Nelson Mandela maybe made a mention of it, but they're both equally used it in a powerful setting that I think made such a good impact on people's minds and hearts. All right, so here's another interactive question. In what ways do we check out and get distracted? What do we each individually do, or what do we maybe see as a society that we check out and get distracted? So I'll just leave it there to get started. Anybody's thoughts?
Well, the first one is social media.
Here.
Is a great way to not have to think about what we need to think about or what we need to face. So that's definitely a very easy go-to.
Is it just social media a blanket statement, or you think some parts of social media?
No, I think social media, including things like Netflix, or now having everything at our fingertips, just distracting ourselves in any way that we don't have to think about. So whether it's watching a TV like a marathon of different shows, or scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube videos. So I think it's all of those ways. Or news, that's another one.
Endless news.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly we can see it being used for good, because here we are. This is a good use of social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, doing it in a mindless way that's not serving some kind of growth, some kind of expansive thinking, that keeps us stuck in a habit space. Good. Anybody else? Anything else what are other ways we tend to check out or get distracted? I mean, I'll share what I feel like I struggle with sometimes. Is it's easy for me to have something really important that I should work on, and then instead I spend time on some of the little things like cleaning and organizing, because they're fun for me to want to get to do. But I'm like, I have some bigger projects I probably should spend a little time on. I can also get distracted by food and snacks. So my problem sometimes is if I don't actually stop and make a meal, then I'm just like, oh, what's my next snack? Okay, I need to have a snack. Or I'm going to work on something, I need a snack. And it can be a little distracting. In a more intense way, I mean, I've had, challenges with addiction. And so I had a behavioral addiction that became a go-to. And it was very easy for that to make me feel the highs and some of the lows, instead of feeling that in real life, instead of realizing that life is also filled with highs and lows. And you can't be as in control of them. And you also don't get the instant gratification that an addiction gives you. There's a point where, your thing from your addiction gives you that high that you can almost guarantee, whereas life won't always give you that. And that's more of a realistic flow, rather than relying on something that is basically falsely in your control that you think you can actually do something about. Yeah, that dopamine fix. Exactly. Oh, thanks, Amy. She related. She said, haha, I clean a lot. I mean, at least we're putting our energy into some good areas, right? But it could be worse. Anybody else? Go ahead, Vatasha.
For me, it definitely feels like I use as many distractions as I can possibly take on so that I can avoid whatever I actually have to deal with. Sometimes for me, it's just that I need a break from my own brain, that I can focus more on the thing that I need to do. But for me, it's definitely a book, social media. I'll clean like one pan that I know that I just need to toss out, but I will scrub and scrub and scrub. Like, I can save this pan and I can't. But it's the easy focal point until I can feel like I have enough time and energy to devote toward the things that are more important.
Oh, if nobody else has to share, another one, which I feel we don't even think about it that way. Trying to solve other people's problems.
Oh,
And we don't think that, oh, this is actually us deflecting from facing or trying to at least sit with our own problems.
mhm.
Because we think like by doing that, it's actually, you know, doing something more meaningful. So definitely have been there.
Good. Yeah, it's almost, when you say that, it makes me think of, there's like a fine line between some of these, because like we said, cleaning can be beneficial, but
Yeah.
when does it become too much? Looking on social media can
Yeah.
be stimulating and helpful, but when is it too much? Helping people is a good thing, being of service to others, but when is it actually a distraction?
Yeah.
And we tend to feel comforted by going into that zone because it feels like something's happening, versus what really do we need to tend to? You know, what is that thing that's our true commitment that we're avoiding? You know, and that's, yeah, kind of the topic here. Good, good, good. All right. This is from Alice Walker. I think you all know her from author. One of her most famous pieces is The Color Purple. Does somebody want to read her quotes?
I can read it.
Okay.
As long as the people don't fear the truth, there is hope. For once they fear it, the one who tells it doesn't stand a chance. And today, truth is still beautiful, but so frightening. But the mind doesn't understand, it worships or fears, by Alice Walker.
Kind of a lot there, but I felt like those were some amazing quotes that were right in line with today. I'll go on, but please, if anybody has any thoughts, something that comes to mind, there's some more quotes and stuff we'll share today, but I like that you said the truth is still beautiful. There's still something to it. Let's not give up hope, and you know what that is. And we'll talk some more about what is the truth. This is an author. His name is Eric H.F. Law. I didn't know of him beforehand, but I found him just in the process of getting ready for today. And he has a book called Fear Not, Living Grace and Truth in a Frightened World. How to face your fears and live into courageous and faithful action with fear not. Americans live in a culture of fear, whether we know it or care to admit it. And I thought, that's interesting. I almost feel like it's a specific device of certain people in power to keep us in that framework of fear, because it's when we're in that space of fear that we're more vulnerable to external powers that are going to say, oh, you need to do this, you should buy this, follow this way, do things that way. We're much more vulnerable and not as supported with pausing, grounding, thinking, what is true for me? What do I need right now? But instead, we have a culture that keeps pouring out lots of things that stir up our nervous system, stimulate that sympathetic nervous system response where we choose either fight or flight or freeze, and then we're vulnerable. It's an important part of our nervous system, but if it's overtaxed over periods of time, it's not so great. So I like that he's offering kind of these practices of understanding it, but how we can live in grace and truth amidst a frightened world. So it's not like we have to even change the the way things are, because that might not be what is possible, but we can learn to live with them. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting way to propose this. And then Emily Dickinson sends us on a very poetic journey about truth. Does anybody want to read this one?
Tell all the truth, but tell its slant. Success in circuit lies, too bright for our infirm delight. The truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased, with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. Wow.
Yeah. And essentially what she's talking about, because it's in her poetry, it's suggesting that sometimes the truth is too bright for our minds to comprehend. So to disguise it or to make a more manageable expression of it is sometimes what's helpful, because if we were to fully express what is the truth, it may be too frightening. It may be too overwhelming. As lightning to the children eased, with explanation kind. So it's like, let's give a more gentle understanding. And therefore we might make some progress. Otherwise the light will just blind us. And then it's strange. It's sort of this ironic expression. We think that the light could be the best thing ever, but it could actually become overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't look straight into the sun.
Yeah, don't look straight into the sun.
That's
Exactly, Kinjal. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts as we're going along here?
Sometimes,
You
like
always remember.
when you're looking too much into the truth, you can almost get that freeze response where it becomes overwhelming, right? Too much information, then your system goes on overload and you're just kind of like, whoa, okay, what do I do here? I don't know. So you're stuck in that freeze state for a really, really long time. So that's kind of how I relate to it. Because I know, like,
Perfect.
with me, I'll sit with, I don't have a problem sitting with the light and the darkness or sitting with myself about that kind of stuff, but sometimes it's overload. It gets to be too much for me. And then I'm like, I don't know what to do here, you know?
Yeah, excellent. I mean, yeah, how do we pace ourselves? How do we set healthy boundaries? How do we moderate our journey so that it isn't just like deer in headlights, moment? Sometimes it is too much, you're right. And so then we just want to check out, because there isn't a coping mechanism yet in our nervous system. And so we just sort of numb. And maybe that's just the way it is until we recognize, how can I store my energy? How can I develop skills so that my nervous system can better relate to some of these things? So every time I'm confronted with it, it's not just overwhelm, but I'm able to go, okay, problem solving brain, take over, and that's honestly why I feel like a practice like yoga, where we learn to sit with some of the discomfort, or we move with some of the discomfort. We work on a physical sense of stabilizing the body, balancing the body. I think it does something to the brain centers. We'll get more into that in a little bit. Okay, any other reflections on that part?
I agree with you, what you shared in chat. Anjali said it's kind of going in phases, moving through difficult emotions. For her, movement helps her move through these emotions when she feels frozen. And I have felt exactly that, but I also feel sometimes I feel so frozen that I know consciously I need to move, but I just can't.
Yes, thank you, Kinjal. I was just about to piggyback off of that and say that there's times where I feel so tired, just absolutely exhausted because of the things that emotionally have been stirred up or the different things that I'm going through. And I know in my head, hey, listen, if I sit on that mat, okay, well, I sit there and meditate, that I don't have a problem with. But it's when all this stuff comes up and I'm so overwhelmed, I'm like, I know I need to move. I know I need to move, but I feel so exhausted that I don't even want to pull out the mat and move. But then when I force myself to, I always feel so much better afterwards.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Good. Yeah, it's such a funny world that if we were able to, sometimes what I find is when I don't allow myself to feel my emotions, or when I think I should be feeling something else, that can be heavy. And to feel like it's safe to be in my emotions and to let myself move through them and trust that I'll move through them because of enough reflecting on, what have I made it through in my life? Okay, I have made it through some of these tough moments. So I find that allowing myself to go, to be in those spaces rather than, nope, get through it, don't feel that, that can feel more like that impulse for me to want to run because I'm not allowing myself to feel what I'm feeling. But it's complicated. I know for some of us that have had challenges with our emotional health, sometimes it can be scary about what if this never ends, or what if some of these feelings never go away, and that can be scary. So we have to figure out what are our tools. What do we have when we're in our best health and our best mental spaces, that we can have some kind of touchstone or some kind of resource. Anjali sharing more in the chat there. We know things, including life's ebbs and flows. Once we get moving through, that energy flow can happen. It's like almost like having that written down somewhere would almost be helpful for all of us, like this little mantra. We know things, including life's ebbs and, oh yeah, remind myself that.
Yeah.
Don't forget, this is it. Once we get moving through, that energy flow can happen.
Giving
Maybe we
yourself
should all write
grace.
that down. Yeah, give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, let's come back here. Oops. Here it is. Okay, we're shifting to a little bit of some yoga philosophy that some of you are very familiar with. And I, of course, feel like when we're talking about what is true, we recognize there's a practice in the yamas, in part of the Ashtanga system, called satya, truthfulness. Does somebody feel like they want to read? This is a longer one. Anybody want to read?
Yeah, I'll read.
Oh, cool. Go ahead, the Stevebros.
All right. Satya. Satya, truthfulness, the second of the 5 yamas, restraints, described in the Yoga Sutra, guides us to think, speak, and act with integrity. The word sat means that which exists, that which is. Satya, therefore, is seeing and communicating things as they actually are, not as we wish them to be. This can be quite challenging since we all perceive life through a conditioned mindset. Our thoughts, beliefs, and past experiences shape and color whatever we see, and as such, none of us experience an event in the same way. Also, what we experience as truth one day may not be the same truth we live the next. Practicing satya requires staying open to the truth in the present moment as it reveals itself. yogainternational.com by Irene Aradhana Petrazak.
Awesome. Thanks, the Stevebros. Yeah, love the.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, commentary.
that was one thing I wanted to say is kind of being in your own truth is challenging. Okay, so if you're in the practice of, you have some kind of practice or way of being in your own truth, it's still challenging even if you have the tools to do it, because everything's always changing. So it's like what the truth is in this moment while I'm speaking may not be the same truth in the next moment. you know?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and that's sort of scary.
so it's like, yeah, it's like, I think it's partly an emotional thing where our emotions, we get challenged and our emotions come up. But the other thing is it's like an intellectual difficulty, because it's like today's truth is not necessarily tomorrow's truth,
Yeah.
or yesterday's truth is not necessarily today's truth. So yeah, it basically changes from day to day, and to be able to pick up on that all the time is almost seems daunting.
Well, especially when we look at what happened with COVID and trying to get, the truth about what are we going through and what are we experiencing. And that's why there's sort of there's sort of like the everyday material realm truths. And then I think there's the ultimate truth. And I feel like that's what we'll talk about as well today. Something that can ground us as our firm foundation, that isn't one of the ones that'll change and fluctuate all the time. Because the everyday world and the material world does have, I think, truths that fluctuate, or our development has a truth that fluctuates. But in the yoga philosophy, though, in which we'll talk a little bit about this, there is a truth that is the most grounded place that we can learn to comprehend. And I feel like that's been a resource for me that I'll talk more about. Vatasha, did you want to share?
I was going in that way too. I'm like, there's so many different versions of one truth, depending on where you stand on the sidewalk. Like the truth for you when you're standing right next to it is going to be different when you grow up and become a different person and gain a little bit more perspective and wisdom. And then your truth is a little bit more grounded in reality. So it might have seemed like it was true at the time, which it seems a little complicated to say, but you only get more clarification when you get more distance from something.
100%. Yeah. Thank you, Vatasha. Yeah, I have all kinds of thoughts running through my head now. I'm just like,
Me too.
woo, this is so good. I maybe some of you are too. There's the slogan that I love with integral yoga, as many of you know, truth is one, paths are many. And there's a yantra that shows all the major religions around the edges of this symbol. And I think of it as all these religions are looking into the center of this yantra, this physical diagram of a mantra. And it's saying this is the truth, but every religion is looking at from their version. Well, when I look from here to here, this is true. And someone's like, well, no, this is true. And they're saying, well, no, this one's true. It's like, hey, y'all, you're looking at the same thing. We're just all at different points, looking at it. So if we could all reach that place where we recognize, oh yeah, I just happen to be sitting from a different seat, but we're actually seeing the same thing. But it's not what tends to happen, is it? Okay. Oh,
yeah, I just wanted to say,
go ahead.
I just want to say, yeah, it is. That's a really good point that Vatasha brings up, is that when you're too close to something, you can't see the whole picture. So, you get caught up in you're like a gerbil and running in a wheel, and it's like all you can see is the next spoke on the wheel or the blur of spokes, and that's it. But it's like in reality, you're in a container, in a large room, in a house, in the entire world, in the entire universe, and it's like all that is really going on, but all you see is the wheel. So, and also, like in learning, there's focused or focal thinking, and there's diffuse thinking. So it's like when you're working on something or reading something or whatever, studying something, that's like focal use of your learning and memory. But if you don't go to diffuse, where you're kind of taking a break and you're letting all the ideas kind of just float around in your head and combine naturally and everything, you don't get as good of an experience. So there's like a balance between being focal, being focused, and kind of having diffuse mind things going on.
It's almost like, are you saying that it's both can be beneficial? So it's not like, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But we tend to get caught probably in one or the other rather than benefiting from both. Or
Yeah. So when things are out of balance, you might be too focal all the time, or you might be too diffused all the time. But when you're in balance, you're dancing between them in a healthy way that keeps you moving.
yeah, I love that. Especially the dancing part. Right. All right, good. Who'd like to read the next one? This is from an Integral Yoga interview with Peter Marchand, talking about Jnana Yoga.
Do you want to read it?
How about I'll read it? Good idea. Thanks, Kinjal. Truth is very simple to understand, but hard to accept. That's why we make it complicated. We are all one and the same. That's the only truth. All else is just temporary truth. You may think you are a woman and I am a man, yet those designations last only until we become the same food for fire or worms. And yet, it is not easy to accept the truth that I am not a man. So right away, here's an essential core truth that we are all one and the same. But as he says at the end, and yet it's not easy to accept that truth that I'm not a man. How much do I cling to and hold on to concepts, or I have this job, or I'm in this relationship, or I live in this city, or I own this car. So we tend to identify and become fixated on certain ways of focusing, that focal, as you were just talking about, Steve, focused on that way rather than being able to have this more expansive viewpoint. And I think in many ways it's because our culture doesn't promote that expansive lens. It's more like hone in this very small thing, because then I think we can be more manipulated to those forces and not be able to ground sometimes in the whole big picture. Just see if anybody had any thoughts on that one. I saw Amy here. Thank you for commenting. She wrote about tools, some of the tools we can have to navigate some of this stuff. And she said, friends, showing love to others, and it's okay to feel this. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's helpful to remember, yeah, what are our tools? We each need to remember that. Okay. Any thoughts coming up from that previous slide?
Can you share the slide once more?
Yeah, let me share that slide again. I see Vatasha raised her hand there, so let's come over to Vatasha.
I love this one so much because it's saying these are all labels, and I love that. I love that what we're doing is we're just defining ourselves, and if we just stop defining ourselves, then we can become limitless. But every time we put ourselves into a category, we're actually putting limits on ourselves to say what we can and what we can't be. So as soon as we say that this body that I live in is not the thing that I am, then maybe we can understand that the thing that you are is capable of more than things than this body that it is. And so in that, the truth becomes something that is universal.
Beautiful.
I wanted to kind of echo what Vatasha shared. And there have been times when I have engaged in kind of similar discussions with people. And once somebody said, you know what, humans.
I did that.
Oh, so You want me to join on you? No, right?
No.
Oh, okay. As humans, we sometimes think, oh, like it starts with what is my purpose? Human species is the most intelligent one and the most superior one, better than animals. So we're meant to do something. And then it starts thinking like, oh, it's a responsibility. I want to impact 1 million people. I want to impact 1 billion people. And this person in the discussion said, well, what if we're just here to just live our lives? And I feel the first sentence where we complicate it because we are like, it's not easy to accept just the simple truth. That kind of like, I have been sitting with it for a long time and been going back and forth, but like that has been food for thought for me. Is that true? Could that be true? Are we overcomplicating and over labeling ourselves because we feel like we need to achieve a specific purpose?
Yeah. That's the journey. That's
Yeah.
a big time journey. I think that we all have to go on until sometimes what I think it is, it's like we get exhausted enough with all of our efforts until we're finally ready to surrender to something that feels like a more universal practice, you know, of being. But otherwise, but I think I think we have to go through them. I think it's just part of the nature of our human mind and evolution. Yeah. But that's why we need these kind of discussions, because then we kind of like air out some of that stuff. So beautiful. Oh my goodness. So this is, I don't know if any of you have heard of Swami Mukundananda. And of course, I have a special connection with him. But he talks about the trap of Maya, and he is such a character. I love his way of sharing and explaining things, and the way that he keeps a sense of levity and lightness in the way that he talks. So I wanted to go ahead and share a video of him, and it'll just take a moment for me to find this, but so give me just a moment, because I don't see the screen up that I had before. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, so here we go. This is about 3 minutes of a video that we'll share. When he talks about God, I also like to make sure to reference that, you know, that's of our own source, whatever that means, higher power, Mother Nature, universal consciousness. This isn't a religious God. So just to keep space and openness to that understanding. Yeah, I'll just let that be some food for thought there for a few moments. And I'm going to come back to our slides. Does anybody have any thoughts, though, in the moment while I search for those slides from what he was talking about? Okay. All right, so let me come back to our slides. So in bringing Alice Walker back, I appreciate this quote that she has. Activism is my rent for living on this planet. Activism is my rent for living on this planet. I've heard of the words also conscious activism or spiritual activism, and that really resonates with me, you know, versus I have to go and get my, you know, garbage can lids and hammers and go down and be that kind of activist. But it's more of finding other ways that we can actively engage in social change, social justice, through the tuning of our own mental capacity and our own service that we feel capacity for to offer in the world. All right, and Anjali, we're at this place where I don't know if you still feel open to this, but Anjali had said, isn't this just like what we're talking about today? Isn't this the asatoma? And I said, you got it. That is exactly what this is. So this is a Sanskrit chant that's used in a lot of practices to recognize our topic today, which I'll share the English in just a moment. Actually, I'll just share right now. So lead us from unreal to real, lead us from darkness to the light, lead us from the fear of death to knowledge of immortality. So Anjali, did you want to chant or share anything about this or talk about your relationship with it?
I'll do the chants. Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I guess if we all feel comfortable, we can close our eyes or lower them, whatever makes you feel most comfortable. Take a breath and center for the moment. Feel grounding wherever you are. Hasato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma mritam gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Lead us from unreal to real. Lead us from darkness to the light. Lead us from the fear of death to the knowledge of immortality. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with love and light, peace and joy.
Jai Shri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai.
Thanks for sharing that, Anjali.
How'd she do?
Great. I honestly, it was really good. I was paying attention to the hearties, the softies. That was pretty good.
Well, guess who her teacher was? All right. Well, this does actually bring us to the end of our Empower Hour, and see you for November's Empower Hour. Happy Halloween, everyone. Happy Diwali. And anybody have any final thoughts? Because as a miracle, we have 2 minutes left. We're not like squeezing everything in for the last moment, but I really appreciate all of you being here. Any last thoughts in our last couple minutes? I rarely get to the end of the slides even, so this is amazing. Yay.
Yeah. Vatasha, I think you're sharing something, but you're on mute.
Oh, I talk a lot, so I mute myself a lot. I said it's a miracle to the end of the slides because this never happens.
It's true, Jean. It's so true. I know. I'm kind of stunned. I also thought with today's topic, I was like, woo, it's going to be a lot to cover, but
Yeah.
but thank you all. I think this was hopefully helpful.
Yeah.
Any takeaways anybody has that you might want to share?
I want to share one thing just about the last slide about activism, and I want to share two things. One, that activism doesn't mean that, like Mark said, you go banging on the streets or even anything. Activism can simply be you doing your part, I doing my part, we all doing just our parts. And the second thing is also, don't feel burdened that you need to be an activist at all times every day, and it's okay to take a break. So yeah,
I think that follows up with what you were talking about earlier. Like maybe our purpose is, just to be ourselves.
Yeah.
And whatever that might be, rather than, oh, I should do this, I should do that.
right.
But to truly work on what is my unique offering to this planet.
Mhm.
And if more of us, I think Vatasha was even saying this earlier, if more of us could think that way, truly what a wonderful world that we wouldn't have to live in fear. And we could be more grounded and centered. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, what that means is keep your practices going, everyone.
Basically. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And thanks everybody in Instagram Live. Really happy you all stayed and joined and contributed, and we'll see you next month. Okay, bye-bye.